Interesting.
Off we go.
Oh, we're good. Item number 1, and if anyone has any potential conflicts of interest related to this project, declare them now, please. All right, none being heard. Yes?
I'm just, because I don't completely understand the whole project, I apologize.
That's okay, and what we're gonna do now is explain it.
Okay, I just know that I live right near there, and I'm just
Right.
curious how that's gonna affect my home.
And we will have we'll open a public hearing and everyone will have a chance. So this is Brunel subdivision. It's request for a 2-lot subdivision of an 11.9 acre lot, resulting in lot 1 being 0.868 acres with an existing home, and lot 2 being 11.03 acres of remaining land. It's located at 4003 Route 22 with private water and private sewer. It's zoned neighborhood commercial. Tax map parcel number 245.4-29. The owners are Robert and Rita Brunel. Applicant is GRA Courier Inc. The engineer is Ida. And we're here for a secret determination and detailed preliminary plan review. And Trevor, I think this is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know some of the folks out there are interested in the site plan and the project. This first one is not about that. This is simply about a subdivision of land and from the home from that property. Same parcel of land that Brunel Asphalt was previously on, but this review for this subdivision is going to focus on this house right here and subdividing a parcel of land off so that individual home could be sold. All of the property is in the NC Neighborhood Commercial District. Just some views of the parent parcel on site. As it looked back in 2021 when this aerial imagery was taken. And again, from 22, this will be the parcel, the house and the parcel that is proposed for subdivision. And a view from 22. And that's the house that would be subdivided out for individual sale. And the lot overall with the survey map, and the highlighted in blue is the proposed subdivision. And we have Mike Kuhn representing the project tonight. If you'd like to elaborate on that.
Sure, thank you. So as Trevor indicated, it's the residential parcel shaded in the blue area, which I did receive a survey plat for and sent over to you today for ultimately for filing purposes. I do have a paper copy of that if you would like to see. But essentially it's a single family residence that exists today, has its own private utilities, and it's just looking to be subdivided from the commercial property for resale.
Sounds straightforward.
It is fairly straightforward. The project did submit the seeker part 1, staff completed the part 2 of the seeker. In advance of the public hearing, we didn't see any items of environmental significance for this parcel, with the exception of the one note that we had put on there asking the applicant to explain how, if there's any ramifications of the DEC spill notice that's open on the parent property and how that may or may not affect that parcel.
Do you want me to elaborate on that now, or for the site plan, or it applies to both? So.
I haven't been here in several months, but typically we would do the public meeting and then do the seeker. Okay, so.
I was just jumping the gun on you.
That's fine. That's fine. You know, surprise me. Okay, so there is a public meeting required here. So we'll open the public meeting at 5 after 5. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this this is the subdivision part of this. did you want to talk about that? And if you do, we'll ask you to please go to the podium where we can hear you on the microphone. And you don't have to identify yourself.
That's right. My name is Deborah Lee, and I was looking at the picture that was just shown. That property is immediately across the road from my home. So I'm wondering, if that's divided, what exactly is Burnell planning on putting there? And how is that going to affect my property? The traffic patterns on 22? Because we've already have a lot of issues with truck traffic. And it's taken down power lines, telephone lines, cable lines.
I'm a little bit gonna ask a question myself. Do we want to go into that now, or do we want to go into that?
Well, I think
the second half?
you're talking about the houses across from you.
The house is
The house is
directly across the road from mine.
The house will remain a house and will be sold privately, I believe, or up to the owner to decide if they want to sell. And then this right of way, is part of the site plan, but
There's no proposed improvement.
there's no proposed change to this driveway that's in between. The majority of the activity will be down here further.
And just so you know, the actual plan for Great Courier with the FedEx fleet maintenance, that's next on the agenda. This one is just simply for subdividing out the house and selling the house or renting it separately. So what's proposed in this part of it is no change. It's just the house to remain a house.
So that will remain a home and not a
Unless they tear it
commercial
down for
building.
some reason.
From what we know right now, it's still proposed to be a residential parcel.
And you're
Is that
welcome, once again, we will have a public meeting on the second part of this.
Could you show me which is your house?
I'm sorry.
You might not be able to reach it, but
We're right here.
could you point to it? We have someone a little
Come on,
taller than you.
I'm sorry.
So
We're located right in there.
that home there.
Yes,
Okay,
So you're right across.
so
from
you're
the
right across
residential
from
front.
that home.
yes.
Um,
We're the,
to your
in
knowledge,
case anybody's
both of them
interested,
are
they
residential.
drive up and down that road and they see that parcel. Our home is a dark charcoal color house.
And if they wanted to change that, they'd have to come back.
For anything that
Is
isn't
it
allowed in
residential?
NC, it's either neighborhood commercial, even, well, any use other than the house would require site plan because it'd be a change of use.
So if they changed it from being a residence, they would have to come back to here, but that's not the plan, right?
Correct.
Okay.
The plan staying as a house, right?
Are you satisfied so far, Beverly? Good.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure, cause I thought when I saw the outline in the blue that they were gonna wipe that out and it was like, wait a minute.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, they're just changing, they're adding a parcel boundary. This corner is a new parcel boundary.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just
and-
worried about my property values, what was going to happen.
and if
So
I
it's gonna be
compare,
just a regular residence.
Yeah.
if I could paraphrase, and anybody from either the projects can correct me, but the individuals who are interested in buying the property and doing the other use aren't interested in the residence, so that's why it'd be subdivided and sold to remain a residence and not part of the property. It's because the home is located on the rest of that property that it's not of use to the future owner, and the current owner would get value by, keeping it as a home and selling it and having it stay a residence.
Is there anyone else
Thank
who wishes to speak to this? Okay. Well, we'll close the meeting at 10 after. Okay, now back to the seeker.
I reaffirm my previous statements.
Okay, all right, but do we have, is the oil, where is this going?
Okay, so I can elaborate. So since the sketch plan meeting, when we were here, we've reached out to the DEC regarding the open spill case. And so to go backwards in time, this was 2018. Prior to 2018, there were, I believe, 4 other spill cases that were all investigated and closed. So the only open case dates back to 2018. So in conversations with DEC, that was started in 2018 by a complaint from a neighbor. The DEC did a site visit at that time. They found basically what any of us have found driving by: tire piles, drums, some areas of soil staining on the surface. So they basically filled out an evaluation from that. It went to a few DEC departments, but then nothing happened. You know, they explained it due to staff turnover and then COVID, it just kind of sat. So to date, there's been no enforcement actions. There's been no specific target of what needs to happen. They've categorized this as general housekeeping, meaning clean up the site. So as part of that, the seller, as part of the purchase agreement, is required to clean up the site. They're required to take all the abandoned and working vehicles off the property, the tires, etc. So in our conversation, we believe the forthcoming actions will go a long ways to being allowed to close, or not allowed, but to having DEC close that open spill case. But the conversation with DEC is to kind of reinvigorate this. It would probably be another site visit and then confirming what materials are going to be disposed of and so on and so forth.
Do we know what the stain was caused by? What were the other spills?
The DEC, no, there was nothing in their file that they specifically targeted anything. So yeah.
Do
But
we
the
know
que-
where
the
the
real question
stuff
was,
is?
Is it on the residential lot that we're dividing up?
I don't have any evidence to say one way or the other, but with all of the, you know, my observations, open drums and closed drums were behind the building here. And then there were tires back in here in proximity, but I don't think the tires were really anything other than housekeeping. And then, you know, some dilapidated tankers were here. And then these were more so working asphalt tankers. And there was some piles with drums back in here. So I don't have any reason to believe it impacts the residential property portion, but so moving forward, that's the path is to have DEC come back, review what the items of concern are, review with the purchasers that it's all going to be disposed of.
Abby, did you have a question?
So the answer to the question is, we don't know.
Not with any certainty.
Do we know where the 3 closed spill incidents were?
No,
I mean, that might give us some clue as to where this stain is. Hopefully they'd all be down at the southern end of the property.
I don't think the DEC records were that specific. Let's see if I have a copy of those. No, I only printed out the printout for the open case.
Okay.
But they are not all that specific.
So Trevor, how does that affect what we intend to do? Since it's still a big question.
Well, we have a negative deck.
Yeah, I mean, we have a draft negative declaration prepared for you to consider based upon, conditions that the DEC's, whatever the DEC determines needs to be fixed, gets fixed. Now that is really relative to the actions of the site plan.
Correct.
And the reason I made the comment for the subdivision was more for a potential purchaser to understand whether or not there was something taxed to their parcel.
Yeah.
And we don't run into this very often. We often deal with site plans on parcels that have a known either DEC registration number or historic situation tag to it or an institutional control. And do I think it's in that area? Probably not, but we technically don't run into this a lot when we're subdividing a parcel out that has some open condition.
Right.
And sorry to interrupt, but in that context of any institutional controls, we asked the DEC that, and they said no, there's no active enforcement, there's no mandated, testing or anything really. This was a general housekeeping case that, which is why it's sat in a file for 5 to 6 years with no action. So
It wasn't, they didn't
Didn't rise
observe
to a
an
certain
acute,
level of concern.
yeah, they didn't observe an acute hotspot. It was general, like you said, kind of housekeeping. I mean, just talking through that, the owner is still the owner of that parcel. If there's cleanup associated with that when the DEC comes out, they're gonna have to clean it up, right? Because they're gonna own that. The spill would be for the property. I doubt the DEC is gonna care that you subdivided it off and you still have a deed to it next to it if it's,
Still the same owner.
that's where the contamination is, you know?
So they're leasing this to the other company, is that the case, or?
No, I think it's for sale.
well, so presently, Bob and Rita Brunel own the property. They sold the business of Brunel Paving Company to another entity some years back. So currently, that other entity that operates Brunel Paving Company is leasing the property. They're leaving, and then Great Courier is going to buy the property for their own use.
less the
House.
Correct.
house.
Right. And, do we know what stage they are? You know, have they committed a down payment?
There is a purchase and sales agreement. in
Okay.
place.
Yeah.
Is the remediation of any environmental problems a condition of the sale?
So removing all of the debris, tires, drums, equipment is a condition of the sale. There was some preliminary investigative by a inspector, but they do have a proposal from KAS to do a phase 1 and 2 environmental assessment of the property. I think the big hurdle for that was to get the use variance to know if their project could even proceed, which the zoning board did grant. So a phase 1 and 2 is, planned to explore if there are any other concerns.
And that's before the finalization of the transaction.
Correct.
And you indicate that you don't have much information of the previous spills, but do you know if there was any soil remediation? Was there any significant, soil removal or, remediation of any of those spills or whatnot?
I don't believe so. From reading the online database for the closed incidences, they were all very minor. They were all small, either asphalt, tar, or I think in some cases fuel, but it was nothing that went to that level of any groundwater remediation or soil extraction from what I read. They all seemed minor. And they were all dating back to the early 2000s. It wasn't anything recent.
So we're basing the negative deck on the assumption that it is just removal of tires and so forth.
Well, for the subdivision specifically, the neg deck is also that the subdivision itself has no environmental impact. It's
Oh, I see.
overlay-
Action.
Yes.
It's an overlay upon the conditions that exist in the ground. But the active subdivision approval comes with a consequence, and that consequence is now that parcel may or may not have some type of DEC condition. And
Right.
that was the crux of my comment, less about any environmental actual impact. It's pretty easy to say the subdivision has.
Right.
But the subdivision's not making any works, right?
Right.
That's my point.
It's not
It really, so, yeah.
It's
neutral.
So
totally
basically, the subdivision, to know if there was a problem with these yada yada, it would be up to a future purchaser to then do due diligence and his homework to see if there was something that affected this particular lot
And in
at
this
some
case,
time prior to the purchase.
in this case, the owner is the one subdividing the property.
Yes.
They still have that burden of remedy.
So that was your comment. If the DEC happened to hustle and show up while it was still owned by the original owner, then they would be responsible.
I think it's buyer beware, right?
Yeah.
Any
Well-
DEC action runs with the land.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
DEC actions generally run with the land, so even if somebody new buys it, they still have to deal with it. They may not be financially responsible, but they usually still have to deal with it. Like we've had.
It wouldn't go away, right?
The
No,
institutional
no
controls
way.
linger, those don't go away if you sell.
Right.
I will say, if we go look at, it's highly unlikely that the conditions are on that parcel for obvious reasons. We go to aerial imagery, you can see the rest of the site. here is likely, although I again can't confirm where things have mostly occurred. When you go back to the site, you see the residential has primarily been just that for the duration of use of the property, with the exception of what Mike mentioned about tire storage up in that upper corner. But again, housekeeping, not necessarily a spill. So we have no indication that that's where the issue was, but it's part of the parent parcel, which is why I brought it up.
Do we know what's happening with that building that the property line is going right through?
I believe you had mentioned it'd be also used for maintenance as well.
Yes, and the property line doesn't actually go through it. We have the survey. It's just one of those angles of the tax map type of
Okay,
thing.
so it isn't being split.
Correct. It's fully on the parcel to remain commercial.
Are there any further questions or comments from the board? Okay, none being heard, I think I'm open to a motion to accept the seeker resolution. That would be 24-17A, a negative declaration.
So moved.
Second.
Terry Sanico,
Yes.
Debbie Blake,
Yes,
Elena Tamer,
Yes.
Jay White,
Yes.
Tim Palmer.
Yes. And now a motion to accept resolution 24-17B, which would be for the plan itself with whatever conditions are attached.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay.
Terry Sanico,
Yes.
Debbie Blake,
yes,
Elena Tamer,
Yes.
Jay White,
Yes.
Tim Palmer.
Yes. Okay. Item number 2, GRB, or I should say, if anyone has any potential conflicts of interest related to the project, please speak up now. This is the GR8 Courier Incorporated Site Plan. It's a request for a change in use from a pre-existing non-conforming use to utilizing existing buildings for automobile storage and maintenance. Use variance is required, located at 4003 Route 22 with private water and private sewer, zoned NC, tax map parcel number 245.4-29, owners Robert and Rita Brunel, applicant is GR8 Courier Inc., engineer Ada. We're here for a seeker determination and detailed preliminary plan review. And Mr. Coons, am I pronouncing, how do you say AEDA?
Like that.
Yes.
Okay. All right,
Architect, engineering, design associates.
right, but we use the 4 letters because it's easier. Okay, so please, Trevor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's talk about the same site, shall we? But we'll talk about the specified use. So in blue, you have the whole parcel, and as we just talked about, the portion to be subdivided would be right up here in the north. So keep moving along. Oh, just okay. Let's just talk about this then. As previously discussed, the Great Courier wants to begin operations at this site. If anyone has, maybe you've seen it before, they're currently on the corner of Stillman Road in the facility there in Beekman Town, so you may have seen FedEx trucks parked out there. If you have any sense of what the impact looks like, that's where they currently are quietly operating. So the goal is to use this existing facility for maintenance as well as this structure here, and have fleet vehicles stored here and use existing parking spaces for employees. The original application had fueling station because the original intent was to reuse the existing 500-gallon tank to sell fuel to drivers who may come to pick up their vehicle. That's since been taken off the application, so that alleviated the need for a special use permit. However, the project still needed a variance for automobile repair, even though that had been an ongoing thing. It had never been a permitted thing at this location, and it's an allowed use in neighborhood commercial district, but subject to site plan review, which it never had. Pre-existing, non-conforming, been there for a very long time, and multiple versions. So when they came to us, we said, sorry, we gotta pick it up and you gotta get the variance. They did achieve that variance by appeal number 2309 from the zoning board, so they approved that use. You know, they recognized that the building's still there, the garage is still there, you know, and the space is been previously used quite heavily. It required referral to the Clinton County Planning Board for action within 500 feet, in this case of Route 22. They voted 6-0 to approve it. We had some conditions that we already mentioned. One of them was the way we recommended it was that you condition approval of the detailed plan upon the applicant verifying that the DEC spill has been resolved or is in the process of being resolved. And the one thing that Jess was going to go get a copy of was also that they comply with any conditions of the variance. And I don't know, Mike, if you recall any of those.
Yeah, I have a copy of that with me. I saved you the trip.
Told her I was going to ask.
The zoning board had a condition that the residence be subdivided from the commercial property within 6 months. I think their only concern was that since the use is authorized for the existing commercial buildings, they saw fit that to subdivide the residential portion. So yeah, that was the only condition.
All right, and then under highway, so if I do go back to the subdivision, although it's not proposed under this site plan, the applicant is preserving for themselves the potential of a right of way. And so we do point out that if that northern area were ever to be used as a driveway, that would require a New York State DOT highway permit, and they'd have to review it for, commercial purposes and potentially even come back to us to consider whether that's an appropriate place to expand, a commercial exit. So that's identified there. It's not currently part of the plan, but they have reserved that potential for themselves with the subdivision.
So we're not approving an easement as we go forward.
Well, it would be their fee title property, not easement, but we're not approving a driveway connection under this proposal. We do see this a lot with large parcels, multiple reservations of access points. Could, allow for future subdivision of the parcel in future. So in general, it's a good practice to preserve rights of way. But I did want to point that out, although it's not proposed under this site plan, it is a possibility that they're reserving for themselves. That's about all I have to add. Mike, if you want to, or the applicant has anything to elaborate on.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we covered the environmental, although if there's any more questions, we certainly can address it. But essentially, the proposed improvements to the property are to clean up the mess as part of the purchase agreement, and then the applicant would look to paint and freshen up the existing buildings for their occupancy. But otherwise, the site would function largely as it does today. For the past umpteen years, it's been a construction company, so they've had large equipment coming and going, staff coming and going. The proposed use would have up to 10 employees, some office staff, and then some maintenance people for the vehicles. And then vehicles would be on site only as they need repair. So sometimes it might be very few delivery vans. Sometimes it might be up to 20. But as you can see, there's a pretty vast array of pavement and parking areas behind the building. So any fleet vehicles waiting for servicing could be located behind the building, up here, or out here in front of the other garage, which is why, as part of the proposal, there is a opaque fence proposed to be along that back property line to help screen from the residents. So as far as improvements in occupancy, that's really what is planned.
Any questions or comments from members of the board?
I was just gonna ask about seeker, I guess to you guys. Is it appropriate for us to approve seeker considering there's a phase 1 and 2? Like, is it?
Seeker on the action.
Yeah, so seeker on the action of the site plan and its potential impacts. I'll just give you my opinion, but you guys get to decide that. Is that a phase 1 and phase 2 is typically not in what we've done the basis for planning board environmental decision. Generally, that's about, property and existing conditions of property. It'd be really interesting and awesome if we had one. That's really good. But typically, that process of phase 1s and phase 2s happens during sales. So we often don't see them. They're often done for like totally innocuous property transfers that happen all the time. Like a phase 1 is super typical for pretty much any commercial property that's bought or sold in town, and typically happens somewhere in the chain where we never see them, because you're supposed to conduct your own environmental review based upon the resources that you've requested, for under your review. So in this case, we have property information, we have known data about spills that were disclosed in part 1, so we've used that knowledge to base some conditions. But typically, we wouldn't see that unless it had already been conducted and was given to us at our request. Because it'll often, the phase 1 may also identify things that aren't conditions that maybe the planning board would have a lot of concern of. Like, we want tires removed, but they might not be an environmental hazard that has to be mitigated, to alleviate an environmental problem. You want them gone, but the phase 1 just identifies risks. Sometimes phase 2 would include actual sampling and testing of soil to identify what the spill cleanup might be. My general feel would be if the DEC already has a registration number and they're going to mandate a cleanup in the process, then the site plan is the site plan you're reviewing. The cleanup process is already initiated, or in that process.
And as long as we have a condition.
Yeah, that it's
Yeah,
kind of already
that's fair.
baked into the approval. That's
Sure.
my sense of it and how we
Thank you.
thought about it.
Gary, do you have a question?
Yeah, so it's vehicle maintenance, oil changes, tires, yada, yada, yada. Are they gonna be doing vehicle washing and things like that there?
Not with any great measure. I mean, the property's not really set up.
If you
for a
plan that
wash
out, you can do
station.
certain things with the wastewater, right?
Right,
I
right.
was just curious.
So yeah, no, I think it's more routine maintenance stuff.
I can actually add to that. We already do our washing at the FedEx terminal in Beavertown.
Perfect.
So,
I just know if you wash a ton of vehicles, that you have to do something with the water. You can't just put it into the town sewer system for. Right.
Any further questions or comments?
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna have a public hearing in
Yeah,
a second. We'll have you come
We'll
up.
get to that.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Terry. Could you read the condition again about the any environmental problems will either have been resolved or be in the process of?
Yep. Okay.
Please.
And just to elaborate a little bit further on kind of my rationale relative to the DEC in this bill, I'd say this is a good case where the form actually worked and the applicant, did the right thing when they filled it out, because the part 1 is populated correctly and actually lists the DEC previous spill registrations and appropriately lists one that's still open, which is good, right?
Yeah.
That's the way it should work. And so, in some ways, it's good for the board to know that there's already DEC knowledge of a condition that's already identified.
So can we consider that a part of the process?
Well, I think so. I think that's part of
Similar to like a stormwater plan or any other permit that they'd have to get after a site plan approval.
right, because basically the planning board is going to have no jurisdiction over the cleanup.
Right.
We didn't have jurisdiction over the cleanup on our own property at Battlefield Memorial Gateway. Once I registered the spill and found contaminated soil, it became a set box of parameters. We're going to hire a firm. We hired CAS and ATL
Right.
to do testing, submit those sample results to the DEC. DEC characterizes it, tells you basically a work plan. You do the work plan, and then they sign off on it when you're done and close the spill number, or
I get-
consider it remediated.
I guess it's that a negative declaration sounds like there aren't any environmental,
Right.
which is a little bit contradictory.
Well, it's a negative declaration of environmental significance. So,
Okay.
and it's on the action. The action itself is a site plan approval versus that there's
And
any
there's
environmental.
okay.
part
going on.
3 that we can add.
Just
that,
any
like,
legislative or public body
reference
doing
that.
any action has to be secret most of the time.
It's kind of like how when you propose a moratorium or an environmental cleanup, they're considered type 2 actions, because the presumptions you're making that you're cleaning it up.
Right.
So you don't do a secret review on a DEC spill cleanup, for example.
Okay,
Or
Um,
moratorium, which is technically a non-action, it's just a halt inaction.
that's
uh,
an inaction. Yes.
Well, and to that point, this action is site plan for improvements. It's gonna have a benefit to the environment by forcing a change.
Right.
Sure.
Over, since 2018, there has been no change and there's been no action, so it's only getting worse in theory, but
Right.
this would be a benefit.
And sometimes, yeah, and thanks for pointing out we could have further elaborated on this instead of thinking it in our heads. But by conditioning that the site plan approval is subject to complying or being in the process of remedying the DEC regulate spill, that's kind of our point, because they're going to get to a situation where they want to submit an as-built. So we're going to say, hey, what's up with that DEC spill situation? And are you in compliance with the planning board's conditions yet?
So there's safeguards in place for sure.
And hopefully by then it'll be a non-issue, because in order to have the site purchased,
Right.
they're gonna clean it up.
Yeah.
Hopefully remedy any of the DEC conditions, and by the time we have an as-built drawing, we hope that'll be a non-issue. But you asked a specific question, so I wanna read it. The way we worded that was, it is recommended that the planning board condition approval of the detailed preliminary plans upon applicant verifying DEC spill registration 1808072 has been resolved or is in the process of being resolved. It is further recommended that the applicant be required to identify any institutional controls or other DEC conditions placed upon the property.
So it's just them identifying it though, right? Not resolving it. I don't know.
Well, or taking steps to resolve it, that it's in process.
You could, you could go further and say that, because this is draft language, so this is completely open to add things. You could further condition that any DEC environmental conditions on the site, we should link it to that one open spill, 1808072. That has been closed, or however you ever want to word it, substantially completed, or
But it hasn't been, so why?
right before the as-built is signed off,
Oh,
and before they proceed with, final
A certificate of occupancy, yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm a little hesitant to say closed is because our cleanup at the town has been cleaned up for about 8 months, and it's not closed. These things can stay open for
However
years
long the DEC
until
feels
the
like.
paperwork is finalized. Because ours is done, completed, and there's a park there now, but it's technically not closed because the paperwork's
It has to be certified in some way.
correct.
But at some point, the DEC had to give their blessing
Well,
through some mechanism, right?
yes, but we don't.
It's more so that you completed your work.
They observed the work being substantially complete, and we filed all the final documents, but we don't have our spill closure identification yet.
So would that be the language that we use?
Yeah, I think we could craft something similar right now that would be useful for the project. I'm just being mindful that sometimes closure is a word that they might not be able to
Yeah,
get to.
you'd be surprised how
Right.
much stormwater permits. in town
Especially
are not
as it
closed after
relates to
20 years.
occupancy. If there's some process that takes time, but it really doesn't hold them back from purchasing and occupying the structure, then, to tie it in with a final as-built, would we have to do an 80% as-built with that being the 20% as-built
Right.
for full occupancy?
Well, I think the goal, let me just run this by it, because, it was difficult to come up with what is that condition?
Yes.
And still moving something forward and knowing that the environmental conditions getting bettered and remedied. So is it that the applicant is substantially engaged in remedying the DEC spill registration, or they have, cleanup is complete prior to, certificate of occupancy? I mean, I'd have to work with you on what you're comfortable with too.
What was the language that you used for the park? You basically suggested that you brought certain actions to completion.
Yeah, the environmental cleanup has been completed, but
The identified environmental, right?
yeah, that cleanup has been completed, even if the registration's not closed yet,
Right.
due to just administrative stuff.
Well, and what we're saying is that it's either done, or if it's not done, that something is being done toward getting it done. That's.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't wanna put that it's closed because government, as our supervisor is notoriously known to say, government runs in glacial speeds.
Well, it may never close too. It sounds like they haven't touched it in 6 years. They may
So-
never close it or touch it again.
If that gives you a sense how that can happen, because on the administrative side, so, for practical reasons, I think saying it's closed or is trickier.
Elaine, are you
And
thinking
who-
about
who-
language?
Yeah.
And who's the one who's gonna be responsible for saying, yeah, that's complete?
The DEC.
Well, in terms of
What
satisfying the conditions. of
century
the
will
ones-
that
As
be?
built, because they have to
What
sign.
century will the DEC say that?
Yeah.
Oh,
You know, you said for example, at the park, you said it was complete, but they didn't say, did they say it was complete as well?
It's
The
not been
DEC?
certified.
yeah, verbally and in emails, they allow you to close the site back up and continue your work
Okay.
because you've got to a point of, they observe clean margins where you've cleaned up the contamination and they're no longer detecting with soil samples or volatile organic sampling equipment. the
Just like
contamination.
cancer,
What's that?
just like cancer.
Yeah, clean margins.
Yeah.
That's the same term they use, and they sample the soil that you've gone far enough and there's no longer, in our case, petroleum. In this case, I don't know. So the DEC would remedy, or it'll help you identify the scope of work, you do the cleanup, they sample if they need to, or if it's just junk cleaned up and then it's gone and they say, you're good. So this one could be simple and easy. I think probably given your authority and our authority to review things, it probably should be linked to as-built and that the project demonstrates that the DEC spill clean registration has been substantially completed.
They have 6 months though to establish your, some kind of commercial activity?
To subdivide.
To subdivide the residence.
Okay, just to subdivide, just to subdivide, okay. Never mind.
And again, the reason why I think it's beneficial to carefully pull these two things apart is the action that they're proposing, one, didn't cause the environmental condition and isn't proposed to expand upon it. It may reduce it because in their purchasing of the site, they're actually having it cleaned up before they take it. So it's my concern would be limiting the ability to move forward with the cleanup by saying we're not gonna, you shouldn't even purchase the property until the registration's cleaned up because we're not gonna accept your site plan. It's a little bit of.
We don't wanna purchase the property until it's clean.
I think I figured out some language that might work.
Oh dear.
Okay, so right now, the language is basically saying that we want the project to verify that this bill has been resolved or is in the process of being resolved. But what I think we can say is that they will verify that this will be resolved, right? So it's not like that it has been or that it is in the process of it, because we know it's in the process of it, right? It's standing still. We want them to verify that it will be resolved prior to as-built, right? So then maybe we can just say, instead of where it says has been, say will be resolved prior to as-built being signed or something.
Or a certificate of occupancy.
Or certificate of occupancy, yeah.
But resolution does not mean closure of the actual.
No.
I think that'd be
Right.
clear, and we can capture that in the minutes
minutes.
from this conversation, because that's also a little easier and nuanced way to do it. And if everyone agrees that actual closure of the spill registration may take some time due to administrative hurdles, but prior to the issuance of as-built, they have. What would you like to use, Moyna?
That this will be resolved, not that it has been or is in the process of, that it will be resolved prior to.
And
Signing
what
off.
there is still the question, what does the resolution consist of? We don't
Right.
want to force them to have a certification,
Mhm.
because if you take.
That actions are being
To
taken
me.
to remediate spill number,
Well, I think
whatever it
that,
is.
I assume
Right.
Cass's work will probably be submitted to us.
Right, I mean, at the time of as-built, we can certainly update you on progress of, well, the cleanup would have been done for them to
Yeah.
occupy and purchase. So then if there's any outstanding administrative documentation with the DEC, we could provide evidence of that ongoing cleanup.
Well, I'll take another stab at it.
Go for it.
Prior to the issuance of certificates of occupancy, the applicant will verify that the environmental conditions associated with DEC spill registration XYZ have been completed, even if the actual closeout of the registration has not been completed.
Yeah, I think that's,
Because the planning board cares about environmental conditions more than the actual closeout, is what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
Yeah.
absolutely.
You could say remediated.
Immediate.
Yeah.
All right, we will craft that into the minutes and into that condition, because what I'm hearing is it's prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, please have cleaned up the site. And, you know, we understand that it may take longer to actually close out the paperwork.
Okay, I would just like a voice vote that everybody's okay with that?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Okay.
And if it's okay with you, staff will work with the project to determine, yep, you've been working with the DEC, you've gone out, you've cleaned stuff up, you've had testing from CAS, and, you know, we kind of know what that looks like from our own experience, so we can ask for that to be part of the final site cleanup.
Thank you.
That'll work. Very good.
Okay.
A public hearing is required, as part of this process. My cheat sheet here talks about an additional sheet, which I haven't seen, for rules of conduct. How many people are here to speak to this project? Three.
You've got 5 or 6.
Yeah, so I'd like to limit you to as much as 5 minutes if you're gonna talk. Everybody okay with that? All right, so we'll open the public hearing at 5:45. And who would like to speak?
My main concern is the tanks, fuel
Would
tanks.
you like to identify yourself? You
My
don't
name
have-
is Ken Iman. Kent Iman.
Thank you.
My main concern is the tanks. Is there a catch basin and it's approximately close to Salmon River Road? If it hits the water table, it's gonna go right to the Salmon River Road and go down to Champlain, Lake Champlain. For the fuel tank, is any things taking initiatives to prevent that, putting like a big giant catch basin, put the tanks on it, over it, so if it leaks, it goes into the catch basins?
Let's see. What are the plans for the fuel tanks? Remind me.
So there's a existing 550 gallon tank behind the main garage off 22. So that's proposed to be removed. There's
So I thought.
the original sketch plan included that, since it was an existing tank that could be used. But once we searched into the DEC information, found it's an unregistered tank, we dropped that from the proposed action, and that'll be removed along with all the other abandoned stuff on the site.
Does that address your concern?
And is there gonna be DEC testing for the ground, for any loss of fuel in that area?
Only if it's mandated.
And we just had that long discussion about,
They
you know,
have
how
an
long
open
things
case
take.
in
Yeah.
that area.
It has a case number apparently.
I can't promise this, but generally that's a very common thing to be included in the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessment that they said would be conducted. That's like right off the bat, one of the first things they view is there contamination, is there soil contamination? It's typically one of the first thing that's part of it in the review. I would presume it'd be part of that. I can't say that for sure, but I've personally done phase 1 and phase 2, and that's been part of every one I've ever done.
Yeah, because my concern is, because if it hits the water table, it hits our wells.
Sure.
And contaminates everything. That's the only thing I have a subject on.
That's a significant concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Trevor, what is the DEC number, case number?
It's in there.
I know it's in there somewhere. but I don't have it. Oh, there it is.
Got it?
Yeah. Because that gentleman can go online and look it up,
That's true.
Yeah.
if you want the number.
I'm okay. If it's, you guys are doing it, I haven't checked. I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
we'll absolutely keep an eye on it. That's my job.
Please, sir.
Okay. Hi, I'm John Edwards. My wife and I have lived across from Brunel's for almost 40 years. And in that time frame, we obviously lived in the area. We've seen some issues with businesses. And I'm sorry if we came in late. We thought the meeting was at 6. So if I repeat something or I'm saying something offline or something, I apologize. But in that time frame, about 1986, Noel Brunel and Bob Brunel were in business. They were making a mixture of something in the backyard. there was a heavy downpour. And that downpour resulted in whatever they were mixing tar-wise drained over to the southernmost ditch on their property, came across the road in the culvert to our property where the state right-of-way is, and that cleanup ended up down on the northway. That's my concern for spills, and I appreciate what you're saying. And
Mr. Edwards, could you point out your home?
our parcel, we have 2 parcels. Wow, this is really fuzzy.
So Brunel's
Holy,
is the big one right
so is, I think it's this one and this one. I think this is where the store was. There was a country store there a long time ago, and that's right across from the intersection. That's the other business I want to speak about. They closed. They closed because their fuel tanks leaked. Their fuel tanks and that fuel leaked into wells. So there's an issue with that. So I've seen that in the time frame we've lived there. So my concern is there any future fuel oil or gasoline tanks or fuel tanks going in on that property that don't have secondary containment? I believe DEC says now you have to have secondary containment. So my concern is whatever's there is going to eventually leach into our wells. It's all wells there. The town stopped their water down by the fire station. So I'm concerned with what's going to end up from their ground to our ground into our wells.
Was the spill with the business on the corner, was that remediated? Did somebody come and remove the soil, or?
They removed all that mess that they left in the ditches and stuff. Now there's,
The closed business though? Too.
where's their business building? Is this their business?
Yeah.
That's it. You'll see if you drive by their facility, there's a dirt berm. That dirt berm came from that spill. That was part of DC. Now that water comes from all the way up here by Linda Lane. It runs all the time. It's not a river, it's just drainage.
Spring.
So that's my concern with anything that's in the dirt there.
Well, Mr. Coons, I assume can assure us that if there are any fuel tanks, well, we're not expecting any fuel tanks.
Correct. There's no proposed fuel tanks as part of this project. If in the future there ever would be, you have your own bulk storage requirements, as does the DEC.
Yeah.
So those would have to be followed. But for this, it's really just to occupy the 2 existing buildings for maintenance on the interior and no proposed fuels.
So if you see any fuel tanks going in there, you should call.
Oh, I'll be calling.
Yeah.
I see a lot of activity there.
I can say, luckily times have changed, and with that, a lot of different regulations. The town has its own bulk storage regulations now. Registrations with the DEC are, much enforced, much greater.
Yeah.
And, our codes enforcement officers are out and see a lot, and would do inspections on this building. So, luckily, these days there seems to be a better handle on that. Where tanks are. Definitely for the public benefit.
Right, from the environment and the public. I agree with that. I worked at GP for 31 years in management engineering. I've seen everything there. So that's, again, they have their spills along with other businesses. That's my big concern.
That's good to know that you've lived there, especially the historical things that have happened over time. A lot of people don't know that. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was a mess.
All right, I would like to give the podium to you.
Hi, I'm Kathy LeBear.
Hi, Kathy.
John is my husband. We've lived there for close to 40 years. We own 2 properties, both residential. One we live in and one we rent out. I'm hearing conflicting stories from this company coming in, and I don't trust them. We live in a residential area. Brunel's Asphalt was grandfathered in. I'd like to know why you're allowing another business to come into this area versus splitting it up into residential areas. They say that they are going to use it for maintenance and repair of their fleet trucks. They were very vague last Tuesday, the attorney, he's a smooth talker, about their hours of operation. One board member said Monday through Friday, and they didn't give an answer. I'm afraid that they're going to be operating Monday through Sunday. Right now with Brunel's Asphalt, It's a seasonal business, so there isn't a lot of traffic going in and out of that building area. With the fleet coming in, you're going to have up to 20 trucks per day coming into the area. That's what they said on Tuesday. Also, now I'm reading that they want to store trucks there. It's just going to be increased noise, increased traffic. I'm concerned that we're going to have problems and issues trying to rent our property when our tenants do leave. I don't want this business coming in. It's
Right.
going to present a hardship for myself, and it's going to push people out of the neighborhood. Let's keep it a neighborhood, not a business.
I think we can answer your first question fairly straightforwardly. Why are they being allowed? And the reason they're being allowed is that they have a variance from the zoning board.
Right.
It didn't have anything, we didn't have anything to do with that.
And that's my concern, is that
Yeah,
They-
that's true. And it is zoned neighborhood commercial. That's,
So it's not residential.
it's residential and commercial, but they're the only commercial area in, and Brunel's is there because they are grandfathered into that zoning area. But we're allowing another business to come into that area versus keeping it as a residential neighborhood. We live in a nice neighborhood. Some of the buildings, yeah, but the people are nice. We're neighbors. We don't want another business in there. And I don't trust these people. They say one thing and then they come and say another. They're going to be storing trucks there. They say they're going to refuel their trucks there. And now tonight they're saying they're not going to. What's the true answer?
who told you they would be?
So the original application did have fuel station.
Okay.
And then they decided to back off of that request. So although the variance granted, I think both uses, they're not planning to do the fueling part of it anymore.
And the approval from us, regardless of whether a variance was granted or not, the approval they're requesting from you is not for fueling
Right.
station. So they wouldn't be approved to do that.
So should they, in the future, theoretically,
Still have to
want
come
to,
back.
they'd have to come back here and jump through a whole lot of hoops to be able
Yeah,
to put
the-
fuels in.
The variance grants them the potential to be allowed to do it, but it's still subject to a site plan review. And in the cases of fueling, so a special use permit.
Right. So once again, you as a neighborhood will be vigilant, and if you see any fuel tanks appearing, you need to, report that.
So
Do we know when that became neighborhood commercial, when that was zoned?
I went back, it's been neighborhood commercial, I think since the last ordinance I pulled, I think was the 97 one, and that was already neighborhood commercial.
Okay, so for nearly 30 years, it's been neighborhood commercial.
Yeah.
grandfathered in.
No.
Neighborhood commercial is a zoning
Is the district.
ordinance for
Now it's
that
not.
area. It's not a grandfather issue.
Well, the business is there because they are grandfathered into that area.
They were, but
Because
at
they
that
are
time-
already existing.
At that time, the zoning was something else.
Right.
It's an allowed use.
On their site plan application, it says anticipated increase in number of delivery vehicle trips as a result of the project. It says 0. Wouldn't that include, or would it include the number of vehicles they intend to store there?
It's an increase, and they're saying the increase is 0, right?
That's what I'm reading. The increase would be more than 0, because right now, again, it's a seasonal business. There's very little traffic there. Even when it's operational in the summertime, it's not that busy. So we're gonna have increased traffic, increased noise, vehicles being stored on the property. That's my concern.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your speaking up.
I have a question regarding, signs about pollution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't operate on Sundays at all, maybe possibly Saturdays, but that's very.
Can it be an 8 to 4 business?
What would the
well, I don't
hours
like to
be?
pay overtime, so, yeah.
Duh. So what are you anticipating for hours?
Yeah, 8 to 4.
8 to 4, no Sundays and no holidays.
Correct.
So can we specify that?
Yes, we can.
You say 7:30 to 4:30. just in case
Sure.
somebody's lingering around, but
You wanna do 7:30 to 4:30?
just so they can open and close it without somebody saying something, and then no work on Sundays.
So we can stipulate that.
We can stipulate that.
Yeah, Brunel's was very noisy when they were at the height of their business. They were there nights and weekends. You could hear Bob racing his car and doing all sorts of stuff, so there's always something going on over there.
To clean it, maintain it, is the stuff up there that.
So Mr. Senegal suggested 7:30 to 4:30, so they can get there, open the business and so on and so forth, and then, lock up and go home.
No Sundays,
No Sundays and no holidays.
Okay.
Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry.
Excuse me, but does everyone on the board concur with that as a condition?
Yeah, I just
7:30 to
is
4:30, no Sundays and.
how is that enforced though? Like, is it?
It'll be enforced by the code enforcement.
Yeah.
Are you good with that, Jay?
And unfortunately, in real life, it's complaint based,
Right,
You wouldn't
sure.
You wouldn't know.
Don't worry.
Yeah, so you have to be,
That's the
vigilant,
reality.
you get your binoculars
Well,
out.
I'm wondering, have we done this with,
Yeah.
no, I know we
Yeah,
put operating hours, I'm saying for a life type business. What I wouldn't wanna do is create a situation in which we're disparate in how we're dealing with, truck traffic like that, so.
I don't,
Is that
See
universal, do we universally apply that kind of working time frame
Didn't
for
we do one
truck
off
traffic?
of
Well,
Ruger
we've done it
Street?
several times, we
Yeah.
don't do it every time.
right.
We've done it several
Some
times,
off
It's
of
usually
Ruger
dependent
Street
upon
over
what the
there, there was
business do. Some of them.
and
are
what
free
the neighborhood,
businesses.
by ampersand.
people
Yeah.
in the neighborhood say.
Yeah, it's dependent on the
Where the business
environment
is.
And they had a lot of trucks, there was one, like I said, off Ampersand on Ruger Street, and they had a lot of trucks that were gonna be coming in and out, and I think we stipulated hours there.
Yeah, we've done it.
Yeah, and,
We just wanna be even handed with.
Yeah.
well, I
Yeah,
think,
consistent.
you did the right thing, which is also hear the applicant. If they had said, well, actually, our hours of business are 8:30 to 5, you may have considered that.
Right.
And is that unreasonable? Maybe not, but I think it's good to at least know and have a condition, and if it's reasonable to the applicant, reasonable to the board, reasonable to the neighborhood. I don't know, the neighborhood, I don't think you heard that 7:30 to 4:30 was an unreasonable time frame, right?
That's okay.
And
I wanted the applicant to maybe describe
Yeah.
your business and,
That's
a little bit of what
My
you
name's
do.
Luke Sanger, the other partner with this plan. I wasn't able to make it last week, so I apologize. So I envision what you guys have dealt with in the past to be very noisy. Pavers are probably tractor trailers, Jake brakes, right? The biggest vehicle we have is one straight truck, which is 26 feet, but the rest of our fleet is everything smaller than that, down to as small as a van. The 99% of the time, I have to speak factual here, but mechanics are going to be there. We have some office staff, like they said, 7 to 10, that are all going to be leaving relatively off and on throughout the day, but very minimal. We take care of all of our, we're FedEx contractors, so we actually service 85% of this entire geography, all the way over to Hopkinton, north to Champlain. So the trucks will not be in and out all day long, every day with boxes. The boxes and all of that is completely handled at the FedEx terminal in Beekmantown. We won't be doing any sorting of packages that would start at 2 in the morning. We're not going to be, that's definitely something that's handled completely off of site. Our mechanics get there between 7 and 7:30, and do the work that's required on the trucks. And I want to express to everybody, we want to be good neighbors, and I can guarantee you it's going to look 1,000% better than what's currently sitting on that property.
So the way you're describing it, it's not a truck terminal,
No.
it's not a place where tandem trucks are coming to bring product and then getting redistributed or anything like that.
Correct. Yes. So nothing like tractor trailers, no FedEx ground tractor trailers going to be pulling in and out of there at 3 in the morning with a Jake brake.
That's an important distinction.
Well, we're not allowed to do the sorting of packages.
Mhm.
FedEx rules on our site.
Our declaration for the public meeting says it's for automobile storage and maintenance, and technically, are these kinds of trucks automobiles? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, do we want to clarify that at all, or?
Well, I think it's good that he's providing the description. Generally, I mean, that it was fleet, we've been reviewing it under the understanding that it's fleet. And even to the extent that it could potentially be a tractor trailer every now and then, unless it was distinctly prohibited. Fleet is fleet. We usually like to know exactly what that is. But in our conversations with the applicant the whole time, we've known and understood it to be
Small
box
trucks.
trucks.
Small trucks.
So, but that's very good, I think, for the public to hear it and have this dialogue. But as we've been reviewing it, it's with the understanding that it's box trucks and vans.
That sounds like it should be reassuring to the folks that have spoken.
Well, even if it was a tractor trailer, normally you don't repair the trailer, it's the,
No, correct.
it's the tractor
It's the
part that
tractor.
you repair, and that's not, you know.
We don't own any of those types of trucks.
Can I ask a question of him?
Please.
Last week, they said that it would be the mechanics' vehicles and the office staff vehicles over there, but I'm reading more into your application that you be storing vehicles over there versus, well, also on Tuesday, they said that they would store their vehicles primarily in Beavertown, but now it sounds like you're gonna be storing vehicles on Route 22.
So between the multiple companies, well, the Great Courier Company, we have over 100 trucks on our fleet, but 99% of them all are at the FedEx terminal. And we also have routes in Watertown and in Burlington, which has nothing to do with this site. Occasionally, trucks will be coming to our place to fix them. We have to keep getting you your packages. That's part of our business, aside from delivering the packages. So those will be trucks stored in the back, you know, I would say over here on the left behind, maybe not even as far over here. I mean, we can, there's plenty of room here where we could put them so that they're not even in your eyesight, if that's what you like. I mean, I'm trying to be, you know, as honest as I can.
I think a good question is typically how many FedEx trucks do you think you'd have on site? Like just sitting there that people would look and say, "There's."
I assume they sit there waiting to be maintained.
Yes, we
It's not
can't
that
fit
they're
all of them
there
in at
forever.
one time, so we would have, yes.
20?
Well,
10?
20 is what we currently have in Beekmantown in various spots in the parking lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's what the application had was 20 to 25.
25, I think, was on the application. So the way we've been reviewing it is with the understanding that, and was identified in the plan was, you know, roughly in this area, 25 box trucks, pickup style or vans, you know, within that area. And obviously because there's so much gravel and paved area, there's enough room to park them. And the plan that we had showed the layout of that. So that was our understanding. I'm not sure, I think you attended the zoning board meeting just now. I'm not sure how the dialogue changed, but the planning department and this board has been operating under that understanding that it's 25 vehicles and basically what's been described here.
Just to go back one more thing, the initial application with the fuel was to not need to go to the zoning board. But turns out that opened up a whole Pandora's box of completely unnecessary things that we immediately was like, no, we don't want to sell fuel. So that's completely off the table. So the fuel tank that's currently there, like they said, will be removed before we purchase the property. I want that gone as well. I'm sure you guys do.
Are there any further questions or comments from the audience? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just had
Oh, yes. Could you please step up?
differently again. In regard to what this gentleman said here about the berm of dirt after they did have a spill at Burdell, he said something about groundwater from rain and so on and so forth coming down that hill and running right into those berms. So is that, if that berm that they built up around Burnell is of the contaminated soil from the original spill, is that leaching out into our water, groundwater, and across the roads?
Are we saying that we know that that?
I said, do we?
Do we know?
Yes.
Well, that gets back to the step one that you were evaluation.
I don't think they would have stored contaminated soil on site.
I would
I
imagine
assume
that.
it's clean fill.
I don't think they did.
Well,
I
if
think
if
they-
it was under a consent order from the DEC would have inspected that and would have
Yeah,
allowed it.
that's what I'm thinking.
soil.
Even if they want.
And there was four bridges,
Yeah,
DEC.
And regardless, without us presuming anything, you know, there was 4 spills, 1 remains open. The condition is that that be remedied. And we know that a phase 1 and phase 2 are in the process of being conducted, which would do soil sampling. That could be highlighted or identified as an area of potential concern by the applicant if they've heard that. Maybe that would be of interest to them to grab some soil from over there if that's a concern. Might be a concern to you anyway, so even if you've heard something, it's good to tell the person doing your phase 1, hey, why don't you grab a little sample over there and put the burden on the current owner to do the cleanup rather than the video. Right, you know, sometimes just hearing something's not a bad idea. So,
It looks to me like you're going to enjoy an improvement in your neighborhood.
No.
Okay. That's my, just an opinion. I mean,
It's gonna be busier.
It's gonna be busier.
I don't see that as an
but
improvement.
not mixing asphalt.
They don't mix it there. They did.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
That was a long time ago.
All right, are there any further, yes, please.
I'm sorry, one more, I'm sorry. I just happened to think what I was gonna ask before. You were talking about the possible road coming out from there. Is there how do they go about doing a, survey on the traffic and how it blends in with 22 and so on and so forth? Because I know not too far from there is 36, exit 36, and there's already a lot of accidents that occur at that location. And we have so much traffic now, and I'm just wondering how they do a
The analysis.
site analysis as to what conditions the travel will make for everybody else on 22. I'm done now. I've done it all. I just had it at different times.
It's great to have your input.
That's a good question, and before any new, especially a commercial driveway, which this would be considered a commercial driveway because it's not a residential driveway. So they haven't proposed one, but if they do, that will have to get submitted to the DOT, and the DOT, and us if it's a significant site change. But the DOT has a very scripted process when they are going to identify what type of entrance it is, whether it meets the criteria for the right radius and turn angles, and then they will look at, you know, existing crash data and then the DEC will determine whether that's an appropriate place to have. I'm saying DEC, I mean DOT. I heard myself saying it, and I'm like, New York State DOT would review that and then determine if further analysis needed to happen. We've also done that on several sites, required traffic studies to be conducted, and then the traffic study will tell you whether it's a good idea, bad idea, whether you need to mitigate and change something. So there is a pretty well scripted process before that can happen.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments, we'll close the meeting at 6:15. I think we've kicked the environmental stuff around quite a bit already. But planning staff have anything further to say, or are there any additional questions or comments from the board about the potential environmental issues?
I'd like to just do a little recap, that way we capture it.
Yes.
Project completed the part 1. Part 1 did identify several DEC spill registrations, one of them which remained open. Staff completed the part 2. We didn't identify any other items of environmental significance, but have recommended in consultation with you that an additional condition be placed, but we elaborated on that before the project could receive any certificate of occupancy, it should have completed the environmental remediation, even if they haven't received the final sign off from the closure, but should have completed that prior to certificate of occupancy and completion of as-built.
So it's occupancy rather than as-built?
Yeah, I mean,
It's really the same process.
it ends up being the same because we have to approve an as-built before they get a certificate of occupancy. So that was the only additional condition that we've identified in the environmental review.
That and the hours.
Hours of operation, which would also be in the regular part of the review too, but We might want to talk about that one more time, because we said 7:30 to 8:30, and I heard
4:30.
or 4:30, and I heard they might arrive at 7. So we want to.
That, Mr. Sanger, is that what you were requesting?
I have one mechanic that does get there at 7, but it's coming in early. I need to go a half an hour later to suffice everybody if we can.
I just don't want you to put out a condition and then immediately hear that it's not.
I mean, the guy comes to work early. I mean, that's what he does. 7 to 4:30.
Yeah.
No holidays and no Sundays.
Sundays,
No
no
holidays or
holidays.
Sundays.
Right.
Is,
Right.
is everyone on the board comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we've got a unanimous voice. Okay, so, looking for a motion to accept the seeker resolution, a negative deck 24-18A.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Terry Senecal,
Yes.
Debbie Blake,
Yes,
Melanie Tamer,
Yes.
Jay White,
Yes.
Tim Palmer.
Yes. And now a motion to accept resolution 24-18B for the plan with the prior conditions and the additional conditions around, it's not certifying, but what's the word for it?
Remediation.
completing,
Yeah, for
remediating.
ensuring remediation before issuing the occupancy permit. And also the discussion that we've had about time, so from 7 to 4:30 would be the hours. So those are the additional conditions. So resolution 24-18B with conditions. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Terry Senecal,
Yes.
Debbie Blake.
Yes.
Melanie Tamer.
Yes.
Jay White,
Yes.
Tim Palmer.
Yes. Item number 3.
Thank you.
And thank you all for
Yes,
coming.
thank you.
And giving us your input, really appreciate it. This is a YMCA site plan 2024, for 2024. It's a request to construct a 13,255 square foot addition to an existing facility with a parking lot extension and associated site improvements. Use variance is required. It's located at 295 New York Road with public water and public sewer. Zoned neighborhood commercial. Tax map parcel number 233.5-29. Owner applicant is YMCA of Plattsburgh. Engineer is RMS. We're here for a detailed preliminary plan review, and I would ask if anyone has any potential conflicts of interest that they declare them at this point.
I'm still listed as a member of the board of directors, so I've been recusing myself from this review, and I guess.
The board of directors of the YMCA.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Right.
15 came and went.
So some of you guys weren't here last month, but last month we did complete the seeker review.
My
for this-
ETA for Philadelphia is getting later and later.
This project, so tonight you're only reviewing the site plan, not the seeker.
Okay.
You've seen it quite a few times at this point, so I won't bore you with too much detail, but if you remember correctly, they do have an administrative subdivision before us to add property to the overall site so they can expand the parking. The field space in the back will become some sort of outdoor athletic space. They are doing a partial demolition and then an addition and improvements to the building. Some different views of the building that some of you have already seen. Not necessarily a beautiful rendering, but you get the idea.
Not mine. Blame the architect.
Okay, so ready for Mr. Ovios to take over?
Yep.
All right.
Don? Any questions? I know some of us weren't here.
I was not here.
Right. So basically, the YMCA purchases the wellness center from CVPH, looking to revitalize that piece of property. It was built in 1985, and it needs some TLC. So basically, the project, really includes, refurbishing of the pool area, The basketball court and the gym are still in good shape, but the roof needs to be replaced or everything like that. And the project, although it talks about 13,000 square foot construction, really what that is taking apart the current office spaces and rehab spaces that are in the front of the building, removing those and installing a 2-story building of basically the same footprint. So the footprint doesn't get any bigger, but it does have a 2nd story, and that basically just accounts for more workout space, classroom spaces for activities. And then obviously, since it was owned by the base, they didn't have a lot of traffic. The wellness center didn't produce too much traffic. So looking at the use and what the Y feels as they need along with zoning, we have basically finishing of the existing parking field and then the construction of this expansion here in the back, which will utilize pervious pavement to really mitigate any of the stormwater issues. So it's kind of like nothing really goes there in the end. So really, it needed a use variance, existed since 1985. It was zoned neighborhood commercial where recreational facilities and gyms are not permitted. So kind of formality, we got the use. So we did seeker last month, got rid of that. The zoning board acted. They approved the use variance. And now we're here for you for basically the final site plan. So taking a tired building and completely refurbishing it to current standards.
Very good. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board?
No.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't gonna go into the whole alternative energy that's gonna be used for this project, but I won't do that to you.
I really like
done that.
Yeah. Okay, so as mentioned, we're just here to make a resolution on the plan. So I'm looking for a motion to accept resolution 24-19.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Harry Sanico,
Yes.
Debbie Blake,
Yes,
Lorraine Tamer,
Yes.
Jay White,
Yes.
Tim Palmer.
Yes.
Thank you.
that was hard.
We let 505 pound first. This guy's fault over here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Payback for the county planning.
Safe travels. Thank you, Aaron. All right, item number 4, Norsk Titanium HVAC upgrade site plan 2023. Request to install new HVAC equipment on concrete pads with limited site improvements located at 44 Martinez Circle with public water and public sewer. Zoned as D, tax map parcel number 220.1-3.131. Owners Fort Schuyler Management Corporation. Applicant Norsk Titanium. Engineer is Ada. And we're here for a seeker reaffirmation and detailed preliminary plan renewal on this previously approved project. So Jessica, please.
So here's Industrial Boulevard, here's Martinez Circle. This project was going to expire, so that is why they're here for renewal. We're also asking to reaffirm the neg deck for seeker because the project has not changed whatsoever. None of the zoning's changed, nothing important has changed, so the project is identical, and we do not have any other comments.
Let's talk about it longer.
That's okay.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Please.
No snarkiness.
What
Points-
is the
points
delay?
taken
Like,
off for
why
We can
snarkiness.
talk during the last
are we here?
So we're still here because they have not built it. We did bid it out. They got pricing, but if you're not aware, Fort Schuyler Management is a division of the state, so all procurement goes through that. So it's a little bit of a
Nice.
process.
We can't just use their own GS.
All right. Is that all everyone has to say? That's fine. That's good. All right, a public hearing is required. And
It's gonna be a short one.
we can open the public hearing and at 6, whoops, sorry. My watch is going, at like say 6:25 and close it at 6:27. I don't know.
I didn't get that.
Oh,
Could you try again?
I didn't get that. Never mind. Never mind.
I'm not sure I understand.
Cancel.
I have my cancel, yeah. I have my phone off. She's not off. Okay, so much for the public hearing. anything to say about the seeker?
It's a renewal, so there's no statement
Yeah,
to be
so
made.
we're going on what we had before. Okay, any comments or questions from members of the board? Nobody wants to talk more? Okay, so looking for a motion to accept the seeker resolution, which is 23-09A.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
No. Oh, Terry beat me.
Okay.
Terry Senecal.
Yes.
Debbie Blake.
Yes.
Melanie Famer.
Yes.
Jay White.
Yes.
Tim Buck.
Yes. And the motion to accept the plan, the revamped, renewed, whatever it is, plan.
That one was all
No,
wrapped
we just
in
had
one.
one.
Oh, we just had one.
Because it was a reaffirmation.
Yeah, it was 24,
It's a
20.
joint resolution.
Is it 2420? That's the
Oh.
right.
24,
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. Yeah, I apologize. Nobody straightened me out.
Well, because it was
We thought your watch would
it was a
correct you, but.
we're waiting for your watch to fix it, but it was a renewal, so I didn't know if it could be last year's.
That's
renewal
what
or not. God forbid,
that's what she was
I
asking
think
about,
I'm
and I didn't know.
But it's a
Okay,
renewal,